For today's episode, we are exploring what it means to be more solo entrepreneur. And I am joined today by Vuk. So if you could start by introducing yourself for us,
Definitely,
please.
definitely.
Yeah.
Hey, first of all, Tom, so nice to be talking to you again. I think the last time you and I saw each other was when we were presenting together at Dreamforce in the fall,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
So it's nice to be on
Our
a
sold
stage.
out session at
Yeah, yeah,
Dreamforce.
yeah. So, yeah, the last slot of Dreamforce that they gave us, which was lovely. But
Yeah.
it's nice to be sharing the stage with you, regardless, even if it's a virtual one. My name is Vuk Stajić. I'm the owner and director of Maverick. We're a Canadian-based corporation implementing Salesforce, a small team, and um, I guess the beautiful thing about the journey is that through initially working solo for about 3 years, I built up enough credibility, enough fantastic clients that I had to hire. So over the last year, that solo journey has taken me into actually also hiring and managing a small team and a growing team. But yeah, today I really hope that we can focus on kind of the initial 3 years of that journey, which is when I was truly operating the business solo. So yeah, that's me. That's me.
Okay. Awesome. Well, I'm sure as a solo entrepreneur, you wear many hats. So maybe you can start by breaking it down for us and describing what your role actually entails. Like, what types of responsibilities do you have? And if you have such thing as a typical day, I'm sure you're going to say no, every day is different. But, what does a typical day, or as close to a typical day, what does that actually entail as well?
Okay, so we can definitely cover kind of the typical day. Um, you're right. I mean, everybody in the Salesforce ecosystem, no day is 100% typical, right? But I think the first important distinction that I really want to make right off the bat is that the way I look at being a solo entrepreneur or a solopreneur, if you want to
Yeah.
amalgamate the two words together, is distinctly different from kind of what there's a majority of people who are working solo are really independent consultants, right? So they're really just providing, let's say they're signing a contract with another larger company for their full time 40 hours a week that they're just working for clients for another company, right?
Mhm.
What I'm doing and what other solopreneurs in the space are doing is, we have a clear value proposition, a clear way of delivering value to clients. And we're going out there and we're finding those clients that are going to be able to collaborate with us to make change in their organizations, right? So for me, my specialty within that kind of realm of ensuring the companies are using Salesforce effectively is threefold. And the journey that I'm focusing on taking clients through is, from strategy to procurement to implementation to ideally steady state operation, right? So what I'm doing day in and day out is working with companies that are somewhere along that journey, right?
Mhm.
Whether that's talking to companies that are interested in Salesforce or are kind of stuck with their current Salesforce or want to improve their current Salesforce platform, right? I'm guiding them in terms of understanding what the processes look like, mapping out those processes, then translating those business requirements into system architecture, and then implementing that architecture, configuring the platform, bringing in external people to assist in areas where I might not have the direct skill set, custom development, marketing,
Mhm.
FSL, all those different elements of Salesforce, right? Ensuring that that's implemented. And then, of course, when they're live, ensuring that they understand how to use it, that their team feels supported, and that they're getting to a steady state operation. So, day in and day out, what am I doing? Like any consultant, I'm meeting with companies, I'm reviewing their systems, I'm documenting, building, creating training materials,
Yeah.
and in general, trying to add value to organizations, right? So, uh, I hope that kind of answers the two questions, but feel free to, you know, prod and poke at
Yeah.
anything that I said if that makes sense. And does the distinction make sense to you, right? Do you understand the difference, right, between an independent consultant and really kind of having a clear product in the market where you're working with various companies directly? Do you see the distinction that I'm trying to make?
Yeah, I feel like the independent consultant side is more along the lines of like potentially contracting directly with a particular client that's looking for somebody. And I think what you're describing is starts a little bit earlier than that, right? It goes from like proposal stage all the way through to potentially like hypercare right at the end, or like ongoing support, right? It's kind of a wider range of like this typical life cycle. If you are thinking
Yeah.
about this as like a brand new Salesforce implementation, which might not always happen, you know,
Nope.
I guess you get some clients that already have Salesforce and
Many.
need help, right?
And I guess that's where I became kind of a product of my own success. Why I needed to hire, right? Is that, as you heard there, it's what you said. I'm able to be with them through their entire life cycle. And what that's
Mm-hmm.
meant is, and I'm proud to say that our first ever client, my first ever client from 2022 when I started, is still our client today.
Yeah. Nice.
And that snowball has what's resulted in me needing to hire people that are, now, instead of when I had sometimes development requirements that I would find other independent consultants or developers to help. Well,
Mm-hmm.
now I have a full-time dev on my team, right? When I would have some admin tasks that I didn't have the time to manage, that I would have to find somebody to take over, or to take over support after it was implemented. Well, now I have a full-time admin on my team, right? So again, I feel like it's, could I have remained solo forever? Of course. But
Mm-hmm.
eventually I realized that, hey, if I'm going to support all these clients that rely on me, the best thing that I can do for them is to actually bring in a staff, maintain that level of quality. But yeah, like I said, that only started in about this time last year when I started realizing, okay, it's time now. I don't have enough of a break between the clients that come and go. There's too
Yeah.
many that stay and new ones come, which is wonderful,
Yeah.
right? But yeah. So yeah.
Okay, awesome. Well, I'm sure there are definitely some consultancies out there that would love to have that problem and that challenge.
Oh yeah, of
And
course.
yeah, and I'm just curious now, how do you find like the people management side of it? Is that potentially like newer to you than the actual kind of whole running a business part?
Yeah, it definitely is. The managing individuals is not something that I did in any role prior to
Mm,
starting my own company. So it certainly has been a new journey, but it's not I guess I look at management, good management, the best managers I ever had, I didn't see them as somebody that kept me on task. I saw them as somebody who showed me the future, right? A coach
right.
that coached me,
Yeah.
that took me along a journey.
Mentored you. Yeah.
Exactly. And from that perspective, I am a coach. I'm a judo black belt. I have coached children. I've coached adults. Uh, so that's kind of, and I hope if you asked my team without me in the room, I would hope that that's kind of and I trust some of them are listening. So I hope that's how they feel, that I'm not trying to be a manager, right? I'm not trying to manage people because I trust them,
Hmm.
right? What I really hope to do is to guide them and assist them and coach them. And the beautiful thing about our ecosystem is that no matter even a junior person can have an experience, a knowledge, a skill set that somebody like me that's been working for over a decade in the ecosystem doesn't have. So it's not a one-way street, right? That's what I found about management. So what I love the most about it is that not only has it allowed me to provide more value to more clients, it's allowed me to also learn, right? Coach, which I love to do, and
Hmm.
to also learn. So both are important to me, and I get both of those from being a manager. Uh, so yeah, I
Yeah.
love it.
Okay, awesome. And I think that's really important, right? The whole concept of continuous learning and
Amen.
hopefully learning something new every day.
Amen.
Um, do you find that that is important for you and your own kind of personal development?
Of course, and I guess that's how you and I met, right? Both of
Mm,
us are what do we call ourselves now? The Trailblazer Community Forum Ambassadors. Is that
yes.
the mouthful that
Yeah.
we are? I nailed it. Okay, right? I mean that I think you and I share that itch, right?
Hmm.
I can't, if I haven't learned something new in a day, it kind of feels foreign, right? I always loved being a student. I always loved learning. And the beautiful thing about our ecosystem is that, someday you're going to learn about a new Salesforce feature or a new way to do something with Salesforce. And some days you're going to learn about a new business, the way a different business operates, the way businesses think. So the beautiful thing about being a solopreneur is you are working with so many different companies, right? And you do get to learn both how you apply Salesforce and your Salesforce skills to their problems, but you also learn about different ways that they're solving problems for their clients, which as an entrepreneurially driven person
Yeah.
is something that I gain a ton of energy from. And it's kind of the main driver of what keeps me going, right? It's what's kept me going for the last 4+ years, is that energy that I get from learning about different businesses and
Hmm.
then applying my methodologies, my processes, my knowledge of Salesforce to help them facilitate those business processes better. So um, I'm always learning, and
Yeah.
the day I stop learning is the day I'm going to stop doing this, right? Because you know.
Yeah.
But listen, there's so many people in our ecosystem that have forgotten more than you and I will ever know. So there's the journey
Mm.
of learning is never going to end
Yeah.
with
It's
this
never
ecosystem.
complete.
Never.
So, okay. Thinking about this now and your journey, did you transition to being a solo entrepreneur? Like, did you jump straight in and go full time? Or did you have something else on the side? Like, how did you manage that?
So if I think back, I definitely did a tiny bit on the side that kind of propelled me to understand that there is a real value to what I want to do and to want to
Hmm.
do it differently. To build context onto that question, I think it's right for me to explain my Salesforce journey a little bit for those who might not know me. Um, I'm a mechanical engineer by education, and the way that I got started with Salesforce was a complete accident. I was an accidental admin, like many of us start, right?
Yeah.
So when I was joining a mechanical engineering firm that was focused on designing craft brewing equipment and building it, my manager said, "Hey, I'm so sorry, there's not a seat open for you in the engineering area. So for now, you're going to start sitting with the salespeople. Is that okay?" And I said, "Hey, of course that's okay." Right?
Yeah.
Like those people are going to actually talk, right? They're not nerds. Like, yeah, put me in there.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I started hearing them complain about, they had this pre-ordered sales orders that they bought sometime in the early 90s that were numbered from like 1 to 5,000. And you and I are both too young for this, but they would pull two tabs off the side and they'd write on it, and behind it would be two more carbon copies
Oh,
of this
yeah.
sales order. And when I got there in like 2013 or whatever it was, they were running out, and they were like, "What are we gonna do? The company that printed these in the 90s is gone. Like we only have 100 of these left." And I heard them, "Is this in Salesforce? Do you have this in Salesforce?" Like I knew they were using something to mark stuff down.
Mm.
Then I would see them win a deal, and then they'd write everything out by hand on this piece of paper, right? And I thought it was ridiculous. So I asked the sales manager, I said, "Hey, like, if I look into the Salesforce thing, maybe there's a way to like do what you guys are doing without all this paper."
Yeah.
And lo and behold, they gave me admin access. I created an auto number that started at 5,000 that would be filled when an opportunity was closed won. I found Conga Composer, which was a phenomenal tool back in the day, created a template that kind of looked like the sales order as close as I could, and gave them a button on the opportunity. So they created PDF. And I said, "Hey, print as many as you want or email it. Don't print
Yeah.
it, save paper." Right. And that, when the VP of sales was like, "Oh, wow, I've got somebody that can help me with this thing," he gave me a lot of trust. Right. And over the next few years, I fully transitioned to a sales engineering role, picked up some selling on the side for the actual business and managing our systems, spent a couple of $100,000 on external consultants that I brought in to implement CPQ, implement Service Cloud, Pardot, integrate with our ERP. And then we bought a competitor and offboarded them from their Salesforce and into our Salesforce. And then we kind of reach a steady state. And remember what I talked about, getting bored when I'm not learning, right? As soon as we got to that steady state, I realized I love Salesforce, but there's nothing more to do.
Yeah. You were done. Yeah.
And so I sold myself to the company that I brought in from an external perspective. And I said, "Hey, I know how you guys work. I know how Salesforce projects work. I have sales experience. Let me sell for you." So I spent 4 years selling for them, which was a platinum. I don't even think that's a distinction anymore. Platinum Salesforce partner, about 150 consultants that I was selling on behalf of. And within that, I started to realize like there's so many fundamental things that these large projects, when you put 3, 4, 5 people onto a project, and then you would work in a black box, fully separated from the client, and do everything billed by the hour, by the quarter hour. What I realized was there's so much frustration that clients face because we don't spend enough time actually understanding their why and their needs. We work in a black box, like I said. Then we deliver a work product with the first time people are seeing it on the user basis when they're training. And we're lucky to get to an end where the client says, okay, well, at least everything that I thought was going to happen happened, and you didn't charge me more. Like that was the goalpost. Was like at least I think you did what you had to do, right? And I grew so frustrated with that. And I thought, this is not at all how we worked in engineering, right? Like I wouldn't just go to the shop floor and say, this client wants a 50 barrel brew house, build it, right? Everything was designed specifically to their building that they bought to house their brewery in. We had engineering documents, process mapping of all of the different processes that the brew house was going to use. So I knew that there was obviously smarter ways to like apply actual process management to implementing Salesforce, right? So while I was selling for that company, and they've since been bought, and it's been many, many years. So if any of my former managers are listening to this, sorry. I had met a couple of companies that reached out to me directly that one in particular that had a need, but what we did and how we worked at the company that I was selling for was fundamentally not what they really needed. And the way that, because for about a year and a half prior to actually starting in the spring of 2022, I spent designing and thinking about what client journeys would actually look like at Maverick and how we can deliver projects better. Well, I found one of those companies that looked at that and said, well, that makes a lot more sense than what you do the other way. So yeah, there was a company that I helped a little bit on the side, in an unofficial capacity through kind of a friend that worked at the company. But I wouldn't really consider that true kind of like, on the side, because when I jumped in head first and took off running, right? Now, I had hoped, and this is not a story that I've ever told publicly, I had hoped that I would have a client right off the bat. They had given me verbal approval that they wanted to work with me. I put in my 3 weeks notice at my company, and then they ghosted me.
Oh,
which was the best thing that could have happened. Okay. Like it's fine, right? You're going to have those kinds of bumps and bruises. An entrepreneur, you got to just get up. Again, remember, I spent a year and a half designing this. It wasn't designed to work only for one company. And I believed in that vision. I believed in the value that I could bring to companies. And I knew what my game plan was going to look like. And I just started executing that game plan, right? Talking to prior clients, not saying like, hey, work with me, but saying, hey, if whenever you originally made the decision to work with me at the last company, if you had this option that I'm offering, which is for somebody to embed themselves into your organization, help you actually make that change, take you through all of that, work on the process side initially, then fundamentally understand what needs to be done, and then build to that with a clear scope, and then support you through that, work hand in hand with you through that, which option would you have chosen? And lo and behold, pretty well all of them were incredibly optimistic about that. And through that, when I spoke with one member from one company that I had worked like 2-3 years in the past, because I didn't talk to anybody. I was still respectful. If they were like a active client of my then previous company, I didn't reach out to them. It was only people who I had like worked with a year or two in the past, or more, that I reached out to. And lo and behold, I spoke with one person at one company. He talked to another person at his company, and that person reached out and said, hey, I need you. Right. And that became our first client. And like I said, they're still our client to this day.
nice.
Right. So I'm trying to think back to what your original question was, but I think it was about transition, right? So that was my transition, right? I had a plan. I understood that I believed in the way that I wanted to deliver value. I had, like any scientist, right? I had some clear hypotheses that I believed in. And the only way to prove them either wrong or right was to fully commit. And I fully committed. I knew that financially I was going to be okay to take a risk for 3-4 months to separate myself from the burden of full-time employment. And the reality was I worked far more than full-time, but none of it. And still, even to this day, 90+% and many weeks, 100% of it doesn't feel like work, right? It feels like I'm building, learning, growing, and I'm driven by it. So it's not, I'm rewarded by it. So it's not the same as, working a full-time job for somebody else. But that's my spirit, right? I'm an entrepreneurial person. So I'm always driven by that. But yeah, for me, if I'm going to recommend to anybody, it's, don't dip your toe in, dip your toes. And the moment you feel the water is the right temperature, jump right in, right? Don't drag it out. Don't just keep your hand in the water. Get in there and swim. Right. That's the best way to figure it out. I think at least if you ask me, that's the best way.
All right. Awesome. Well, thanks for that and sharing your story with us. And thinking about this now as we kind of pick up the pace a wee bit, are there kind of two or three pointers or like tips advice you would give to somebody looking to start out? And I know some of them have come out in the conversation already, but are there any more that you'd like to add?
Yeah. So I've talked to a lot of people over the last year that are thinking about or are testing the waters, are interested in testing the waters and working solo. And the reason I'm talking to a lot of people is because I want to develop a blueprint program that kind of bases off of my experience and builds a community of people that are working solo. And like any good product design, the number one thing that needs to be done is to talk to people. So in those conversations, by far, the number one concern that everybody has, it may not be their number one concern, but it is a concern for everybody. It's, how am I going to find clients? And I have to sell.
Yeah.
Right. I don't want to sell. The number one pointer that I can give you, and believe me, I've worked in a full-time sales role in a Salesforce company where I had to close $1.5 million of business a year to keep a large company going. What I do now is completely opposite of what I used to do, right? When I used to have to sell full-time, it was desperation, pushiness, annoying,
right,
just checking in, right? It was all these things all the time. Now my sales activities are building connections, sharing my knowledge with people, and doing good work for clients. And that has snowballed, like I said, into, do I have to sometimes reach out to people and say, hey, are you interested? Of course I do. But the difference is that I understand the value of what is being done and I believe in it. So when I talk to somebody who has that need, I don't have to say, do you want to work with us? They ask, hey, like, this sounds awesome. Can you help? Right? So the number one tip that I can give people is, especially those who want to be working solo, and I'm hoping those who are watching this are interested in it. The number one, and if they have that concern, like, well, how am I going to find clients? You're not going to find clients. You're going to build relationships because you're passionate about this, because you have a clear ability that they will find value in. And as long as you believe that, as long as you believe it, and you don't communicate in some desperate way, and you're not coming from a place of desperation, it's going to resonate and they're going to work with you. And believe me, there's so many people from our community, the Trailblazers community, that I helped maybe 2 years ago that I forgot about. And they come back and say, hey, Vuk, I remember you helped me and I've got this problem. Can you tell me? And, sometimes those people have a problem that I'm not the right person. And I say, hey, maybe this is what I would do. And you could talk to that person. And sometimes it turns out, hey, you know what? There's definitely value for you working with us, and they become clients, right? So the selling concern, if that's your number one concern, I would urge you to rethink it, right? Go back to the things that make you valuable, which is you're passionate about this, right? You have an entrepreneurial spirit. You can then sell your vision to others because they feel it, right? And if you believe in yourself, and you can temporarily separate yourself from that steady income, and you commit to actually going and finding people and talking to people and helping them, I promise you will find people who see value in you as well, right? That, of course, is a caveat, Tom. Big caveat is you need to have a foundation. What's that foundation? Your Salesforce knowledge and your real experience, right? Like if you just have an admin cert and you did a couple of trailheads and you've never actually worked in a company, I'm sorry, but you're not ready to be a solopreneur in Salesforce yet. Most likely you're not, right? So you need to have experience. I always tell people, okay, try to have at least 3 years of experience, right? You need to have it. You need to have a network, and that's going to come from you working, connecting with people like you and I, going to different conferences, sharing your knowledge, your learning journey, like both of us have done publicly, right? You need to have that knowledge of how you build that network. And then the most important thing, or one of the equally important thing, let's say, is your industry specific knowledge, right? The thing that many clients love about when they jump into a project with me is that they understand that I've seen many different businesses. I've seen the way other people tackle the problems that they're facing, and having that industry specific knowledge above and beyond my Salesforce understanding is what really takes me to that next level, and is really what brings value to these organizations. Is that when they invest in working with me, it's not just about me knowing how to build a flow. It's about me understanding and being able to quickly understand their business and translate that into architecture and solutions in Salesforce, right? So those are the two key things, right? So your passion for being solo and sharing value, building value, sharing your knowledge, and the foundation that you have that will eliminate your number one concern about having to sell. So that's my number one tip is build that skill set, understand yourself, believe in yourself, and other people will believe in you, and that you're not selling, you're building relationships, right? So
Okay.
Hope that answers the question. It's a little philosophical.
Yeah, but no, I think it's helpful, and kind of we've addressed a couple of other questions at the same time as well. So that's great. And I can certainly like testify to the power of having a network, being part of the community. Like if it weren't for the Salesforce community, like we wouldn't know each other.
Of course, man.
You know, we wouldn't be sat here today having this conversation and hoping to reach and inspire more people. And I think that is super important. Engage with your local community, attend dreaming events, be part of the Trailblazer community online, attend local user groups. Like all of those things can help you build a community and have a network behind you. Because I feel like that's quite a good safety net in a way, right? And like I can speak to the power of networking or having a network. Like somebody knew me, I'd worked with them as a client, I moved to a different organization, and they actually seeked to work with me again. You know, and I think that is a great way of like testament really to having a network, and also running successful projects as well. Like some clients will chase you down to the ends of the earth to find you to work with you again. So yeah, I think that's really great. So thinking about this now, and I'm gonna try to we're gonna see how this goes, right? I'm gonna give you like 30 seconds to answer this question. We'll see.
You know that stuff for me. Go ahead.
Yeah. One thing you'd like to change or make more people aware of about being a solo entrepreneur.
Okay. The quickest way I can answer this is that the name for it does not describe it well. If you're thinking that a solopreneur is working alone always, you're wrong. A solopreneur is always collaborating, right? I'm always working with clients, their teams. I'm looking and working with third-party vendors, third-party providers, external providers, now my own team. It's anything but a solo journey. So if you're worried you're going to get lonely, you're not, right? The name, while it's your journey to build this business and craft it alone, and you're responsible, it's anything but a solo job. So if that's a concern you have, shake it right off. It's not a concern. You're always, you're going to have lots and lots and lots and lots of people around you that you collaborate with, that you learn with and teach. So I hope that was 30 seconds.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like it was slightly more, but I'm gonna shake it off. I'm gonna shake it off. So, all right, bringing this session to a close now. Before we go, what's a way for people to connect with you? And is there any particular pieces of content or anything you think that will help somebody on their own journey to be a solo entrepreneur?
Okay, so number one, LinkedIn is the best way to connect with me. If you are interested in working solo, reach out to me. Like I said, I'm building a program, and what that means is I have lots and lots and lots of knowledge that I've written down into very easy to follow steps and processes and things that you need to think about to make it happen. And I want people's feedback on that before I ever say anybody, hey, pay me for this. I want people's feedback. So if you are interested in working solo, contact me. And if there's any questions that you have, very likely I've already written a chapter about that, selling this, how to design a product, price. So that's what I will say. If you're interested in this, I have lots of resources that, as long as you promise to give me some feedback back, I'm happy to share with you. Is that fair?
Yeah, I think that's great. And also feedback is a gift.
Absolutely.
So always, everybody, if anyone's listening to this, like consider that when you are getting feedback or when you're receiving feedback. Okay, all right. Well, that's great. Hopefully some people will be in touch and we will create some more solo entrepreneurs out of this session. So that's fab. Thanks again for your time.
It's already been 30 minutes, eh?
Yeah.
Time flies when I'm talking at you. So. Thank you,
Well,
Tom.
I didn't
Thanks
like
for
to
inviting
say,
me,
you
buddy.
know. Yeah. All right. Thanks for
No
your
questions.
time.
We have no questions in the room.
No,
Okay.
no questions. No. All
All the
right.
best, my friend. We'll speak soon.
Yeah. See ya. Bye. Bye.